And I have to take credit on the podcast for the Bam Rodriguez tour. So
You turned me on to Bam Rodriguez. Absolute firecracker, just always going forward, throwing punches, and I really like this guy, and I think he's special. He's fighting.
He fights a lot like Usyk to me. Like he looks like a little 115-pound Usyk. Like his footwork, he's a lefty. He holds the high guard. He's got great footwork. And 115 is hard to look like a heavyweight, but they have a similar style.
Similar style. I think he's a higher pressure fighter.
All 115s will be over heavyweight.
Yeah, of course, and it's kind of foreign to me because I don't really get into the 115s, but when I force myself to sit down and watch them, I mean, good God, it's just nothing but fireworks and
so much fun to watch. It's just pure fucking action. Like
what I like about this guy is he's not necessarily, he jumps up and down in weight. He takes fights on last minute. He's only got 15 fights, so he's new.
He's a baby. I mean, what is he? How old is he? 20? 19?
I think he was. I don't think he was 20 yet. I think he's 19.
19. He's a baby.
And don't quote me on that, but he's fighting a really very good veteran of 50 some odd fights, and I watched both these guys, and one was a little inactivity in that late stage of your career sometimes does it benefit you. And I just, I think this is a live fight. I think that it's a big test for Jesse Bam Bam.
Yeah.
And I'm looking for him to pass it. I think he's on a roll. I think Soar is coming toward, he's in the twilight, hasn't fought in a while. And I think that Jesse's gonna wear him down.
This is Soar is technically 2 weight classes bigger than Jesse.
Right.
So technically there's, but at 115,
that's the beauty of these kids, man. I mean, you would never see Spence take a last minute fight that he didn't train for 8 weeks. They're not afraid of losing. It's just run and gun. And that is special. That's a special quality to have as a young fighter.
When you're coming up against somebody who has that much more experience than you, I'm sure going through your career, you had, people you stepped in the ring with that just had so many more miles than you. What was that like? And were there moments where you're like, holy shit, this guy has tricks I haven't seen? Or was it just you fall into your rhythm and do
the worst thing for me, and I don't want to speak for all fighters, because I was matched very well. I was taken care of. When I was put in against guys with more experience than I had, they were usually pretty long in the tooth. I was supposed to win. It was going to be It was going to be difficult, but it was a pass. It was a test that I was meant to pass. Okay. Yes. I'm not sure that. I think Jesse will be favored in this, but I'm not sure it's a given that he's just going to walk past this guy, because the guy is, like I said, 55 fights. He beat Chocolito, and he comes right down. What he does is the way he lands is he throws punches in the blend. So he catches you while you're throwing, but he comes right up the middle while you're swinging wild shots. And I've seen it many times in watching him. And that's going to be a problem. I mean, if he hits this guy in the blend like he's used to doing, there's going to be problems for Rodriguez. So I'm looking forward to maybe Rodriguez having a little bit of shit. What is that? When you have bad times, some whatever. Fucking, he's going to have some things he has to solve, some answers he has to come up with. So adversity is the word I'm looking for. I think there's going to be a little bit of adversity for Rodriguez against this guy, because this guy knows, man. He's been there and done it.
It's always interesting to see a young fighter that's super talented and has belief in themselves, hit some adversity. He has Rodriguez has fought larger fighters before. It's not abnormal. His first major defense was Quadras, who's much bigger,
which he took on short notice.
Took on 6 days notice.
Yeah.
And just dominated the fight.
He's just a fucking gun, man. He's a gun.
He's a gun. This kid's special. First time I saw him was last October, and he was just a young kid with 12 fights. Now he's a champion. And the first time I saw him, I said, this kid's a masterful boxer. His defense is amazing. He shells up real nice. Like, he keeps a high guard. He doesn't take chances, and he's tenacious. He gets in there, but he's a masterful. But what he does real nice is he kind of keeps out there in standard stock, and then he doesn't overuse his footwork. When he hits you with the footwork, it's because he's getting ready to hit you with something serious. It's almost like Tank did versus Romero, where Tank was getting his ass kicked and then just all rounds getting his ass kicked, outboxed, and then he just did his footwork one time and knocked Romero into a different dimension.
Yeah.
It's when he makes that footwork decision.
It's
for fun or looks. It's for a purpose. Everything's purposeful. That's why I like Tito Ortiz so much. There wasn't wasted motion.
And it's an adjustment, and it's a thought out, planned adjustment. It's not just something he does out of desperation. He has the answer.
Just showing off that you can move feet. You know what I mean?
When you're running, when you're rising in the ranks, that's when questions need to be answered. And he had an answer that night, and the answer was his footwork.
I mean, but take a fight on 6 days notice. He beat Jose Alejandro Burgess. That was I think the fight that I was so impressed by. And I think this is going to be a good fight, man. The good thing is we have something fun to look forward to, because right now there's no sports. The other thing, Saturday is a fun UFC card. I know you're not a huge UFC guy.
I've been watching a little bit. I watched the other night. I can't knock it, man. It's really interesting. I'm gonna stay with it. I'm gonna keep watching, and it's just fun. I don't know shit about anybody who isn't a UFC fighter, but my God, you can sit and I can take what I know about boxing and apply it a little bit. It's a lot of fun to kind of learn by just jumping in.
Watching combat sports is amazing. So
right,
without boxing there would be no UFC. Without the UFC there was boxing. So one of them needs the other one doesn't need the other to exist. So there was sort of a period of time where boxing fans are like, what the fuck, this is something new. But on Saturday we have Gamrat versus Surikin. I can never say his name. These are lightweights. Sar, I call him Sar because you don't even try to pronounce these fuckers' names. He actually has won 3 in a row, but he went to a decision with Islam Makhachev, which I fuck up again. But he took Islam to a decision. Islam's a fucking monster. So Sar is that decision, just going to a decision with somebody who's just mauling everybody, means he's a real deal fighter. And he's fighting he's actually fighting Gamrot. So Gamrot he knocked out Holtzman, who's a Jewish athlete, so don't hold that against him. But it is jujitsu, so you would think he'd be have a chance. But he did knock out Holtzman. All these Jewish athletes, these poor bastards, they get in there and they fight. But Holtzman's the real deal. Not all jokes aside, he's a hell of a fighter. He submitted Jeremy Stevens, and he TKO'd Diego Ferreira. Uh,
Okay.
so so you're looking at two people that combined are on 2-3-0 runs. Both are in the top 15, and whoever wins this fight's likely moving into the top 10. Whoever loses is probably staying in the top 15, depending on how they perform. Of course, it depends on the performance.
You know what I found in watching these fights, and there's a point to this. I have a lot easier time getting the UFC than I do boxing. It seems like there's a lot more of it. There's a lot more free fights on TV. I think they're doing it right.
They are doing it right. And the best thing about it too is because they're their own matchmaking service, you don't have to keep in touch with 70 different belts. I've got Bellator and some other stuff I follow, but I can't follow it very cleanly. I actually follow Rough and Rowdy out of West Virginia and Bare Knuckle more than I do Bellator, because Rough and Rowdy has midgets that beat the shit out of each other with fat strippers.
So let me ask you this.
Everybody gets knocked out and cut. So those things, I love midgets. I love them.
I'm not being coy. Does the championship, does that really matter? Like the middleweight champion in UFC? Because I don't see a lot I don't see a lot of hype about whoever's holding the belt. In fact, come to think of it, I don't even see belts and shit. It seems like they're really just about the fight more so than boxing.
They are, and sometimes having the belt is like a hot potato. It's too much external pressure.
It just doesn't seem like, oh, well, he's champion.
Some people wear it, some people don't. I mean, Islam. Yeah. Israel definitely wears it as a champion. Usman wears it as a champion. Stylebender, he wears it as a champion. Like they are built for being champions. And then there's other people that aren't. I mean, some people literally they have it and it's like, whoa, what's on me? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm a fighter. I'm here to fight, but I've worked us so hard, but this thing's on me, and now it means that I have all these interviews.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like that in boxing to some degree, but I think in UFC, there is a little bit more humility with martial arts than there is with boxing. Boxing starts out with sort of kicking the shit out of each other is a standard, whereas martial arts sort of starts out with that respect and humility as sort of the ground basis for the art.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I would train for boxing in predominantly MMA gyms, they're teammates. Boxers are not teammates. Boxers don't necessarily help each other. They do, but they're not a team. And it was pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive to watch my MMA friends. I mean, they stand behind each other.
It's a crew.
And the better you do, the better they like it. Because the better you are, the better they are. I mean, they lift each other up, and it's a really good system the way they go.
It's a family, and the weird thing about it too. So it started off in Brazil where there were real wars between gyms, and they used to be on film, so that the Gracies would. A lot of the ass whippings that have ever happened, starting back in the beginning, were all filmed by the Gracies. They would have flat up wars where they'd bring their dojo to another dojo, and it would all be on film. They'd be fighting, or the head person would fight a Gracie on a beach. You can watch all these old raw ass films where they're in literally like little houses in little rooms, just beating the shit out of each other for real. And sometimes it's their own people and sometimes it's other people, but these gym wars became real. But what's happened is now there's so much respect. These gyms train with each other. All the senseis know each other. All the, the instructors, whatever you want to call them, they know each other. There's so much respect that they'll bring the gyms together to roll with new people, to learn different things. They'll do seminars. They'll do judo. They'll do specific judo. They'll do specific grappling, wrestling, grappling, then they'll do some stand-up kickboxing. So the arts have sort of melded, but there's so much respect. that even when people come in like Conor McGregor and talk all that shit, everybody knows it's really to sell a fight. Very rarely is it real, like you saw with Kobe Covington and Masvidal. That's a real hate issue because they were best friends. That's what made that fight.
Yeah.
Even though there was no belt on for that pay-per-view, it became a major fight because everybody knew that was the real deal. They fucking legit hate each other. And it ended with Masvidal attacking him outside of a steakhouse and being arrested after
You
getting
just you just mentioned McGregor. Now I'm hearing whispers of a rematch with him and Mayweather.
And Mayweather, yeah, I have zero interest to watch it. I mean,
Yeah, me neither.
I just zero. I mean, it's a money grab, but it's so stupid. I don't really give a shit. I saw that. I said, I responded. I was like, not interested. I mean, not interested at all. The other fight. So again, you'll watch it because you're watching now. But Manis and Nurma, you can't even say his name, Nurma. So Manis is 14-1 and maybe the most underrated. Maybe the most underrated fighter in the lineup because he doesn't talk a lot of shit. He's not really over the top, but he's fucking 14-1. Nurm, who he's fighting, came in with the same hype as Khabib. Now, Khabib is like considered to be on the list of Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Khabib came in, beat everybody. Nobody even came close.
Who is your Rushmore?
Spider Silva, Khabib, at that point you can add, any number of, but those Anderson, I would add BJ Penn up there because there was a period of time where BJ was just fucking special. And it clearly wasn't on steroids. Whereas
St. Pierre,
George St. Pierre could easily be up there. I mean, again, that's where it becomes really weird. And even Usman, right now, you've got Stylebender up there making a case to be the best ever at welterweight. I mean, you can make that case. He's making a lot of fighters. He can change his style so dramatic. He came in as a kickboxer and learned MMA, and he's just so fucking. You can't touch him. Like sometimes when he gets in fights with people who have, can do certain things, he just takes it away from him. And then those people that he makes look really bad destroy everybody else after him. Like he's just, it doesn't matter what you put him up against. He has an answer that can make them look like neutered kittens. And then in the next fight, they're invincible for like the next 6 fights in a row. You're like, wow, this guy is fucking good. But again, it's hard because the sport's evolved so fast. I mean, guys like Chuck Liddell and stuff that came in, he wasn't even an early guy. He was in that middle range, like UFC 90 to 100 and whatever. You can go back and look at the Shamrocks and the Gracies. I mean, these guys were with no rules. You could stop somebody. There were no weight class.
Tito Ortiz.
Tito Ortiz had his day. Tito Ortiz got knocked out by Anderson Silva recently. But you look at the beginning with the Gracies, they would go in as 165 pounders against 380 pound guys. And there was no weight. It looked like the worst matchup ever. The guys would come in, start pounding on them. You're like, oh, these poor little Brazilians. This guy's going to get the shit kicked out of him. Next thing you know, it's like 18 minutes later on the mat and the guy's going, you're like, what happened? Because there weren't even times. They would just let them sit there and suffer on the ground. So that fight's going to be amazing. The Magny fight's going to be funny. Again, two top 15 welterweights that are out there. So we've got some good fights on the UFC side. It's going to be a fun weekend, man. I'm excited.